Good morning, Revolution, everyone, and welcome to our stream. Welcome, Duncan, for the first time, I think. Very happy to see you coming to us from Baltimore, or B-more, as we used to call it, when I lived in that area back in the day. Anita, good morning to you as well, coming to us from Columbus, and Scott from upstate uh, New York. We're very happy to have Duncan with us. Duncan is a leader of our Peace and Solidarity Commission. And the conference is coming up soon, Duncan. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the conference is coming up on Saturday, November 8th, and it will be a meeting of peace and solidarity activists, but also activists from other sectors, labor, environment, women, people of color, and so forth, to try to broaden and unify, see if we can come up with some helpful ideas to broaden and strengthen the peace movement. So that should be pretty exciting. It should be pretty participatory. And so we're really looking forward to it.
Well, that's a really important issue, given Trump signaling that, well, actually, he didn't signal, he ordered the Pentagon to increase nuclear testing, which we're going to come to in a little while. And then, they're shooting up boats in the Caribbean and acting like a big bully and re-embracing the Monroe Doctrine and all the while campaigning that he's a peace person. So we'll talk about that in a little while. And Anita, how are things in the great Buckeye State of Ohio?
Uh,
You go ahead,
things
tell us.
things are good. Happy Halloween, everyone. My club is having a little Halloween party this evening, so we're looking forward to some rest and relaxation this evening. And yeah, things are good in Ohio generally, except the Republican supermajority is killing us actually. So yeah, they're
Halloween,
redistricting again.
Halloween party, did you say? Are you dressing up? Are you?
No, I don't think so. I'm cooking though, so that's some contribution.
Okay, same for me. And Scott, your Halloween, are the twins and your daughter ready to go trick or treating?
So trick or treating has already happened in my town. Um,
Wow.
uh, the three little communities that straddle the border here in New York and Pennsylvania organized together and pick a night, and it was Wednesday this
Very
year.
nice.
Avoid Friday and weekends for some reason,
Hey,
but
I have
they
a
had a good
question.
time. Yeah.
I have a question for you. I know when you were a child, you went trick or treating. You got a lot of treats. But my question to you, Scott, is: did you ever pull any tricks?
Um, I'm going to assert my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution.
I see.
No, I was not. I was not. I was not a. I was not much given um, to tricks. I probably should have tried a little more.
Okay, well, I'm not. I don't believe a word you just said. Let's get started, everybody. We are streaming on Twitch, on YouTube, on X, and on Facebook. On YouTube now we have 1,500. I'm sorry, 15,100 plus. We reached 15,000 mark a couple of weeks ago. We're on our way to 16,000. And so if you like what we're saying, click like. If you got a comment to make a comment, ask a question. If you really like what we're doing, what we're going to ask you to do is please subscribe and send it to a coworker or a family member or a neighbor and ask them to subscribe so that we can increase the number of people who are participating in our program. We want it to be interactive and we want to spread the wealth. So, what are you waiting on? Hurry up, subscribe today. Uh, Today, we are talking about the US and China uh, visit, the summit. Uh, I believe Trump met with the head of the Chinese party and head of state. Comrade Xi in Korea the other day, in the course of a broader tour in Asia. Um, and we're going to dig into that for a moment, but I don't think that we should let the moment pass, Anita, without
Mm,
reflecting on the fact that food stamps are going to be cut off today because of the government shutdown.
mhm,
And and that's 40 million people across the country. 40 million
mm.
people, 1.5 million of whom live in your state, Ohio.
Mhm.
Do you think that's a smart move for the Republican Party, for the MAGAites, given that we're verging on the electoral season for the 2026 midterms? Anita?
I think it's a very cruel move, and really it shows how little they care about ordinary people and the struggles that people are going through. They're building a big ballroom. They cut already this big ugly bill, cut 180 some thousand billion or a million. I no, I'm going to don't quote me on numbers from food stamps already, and now they're cutting it to zero. We had a big effort in Ohio in the state house yesterday to try to get the Republican supermajority to allow a billion. They have billions of dollars in a rainy day fund, and they want to use it. The Democratic Party representatives from Columbus and from Cincinnati and Cleveland, the urban areas, really want to use that as uh, a buffer to get us through this shutdown and the cancellation of food stamps. But the Republican supermajority said no, no, they're not going to let us use those billions of dollars that we have in reserves for just this kind of occasion. They're not going to let that happen.
Mm.
So it's just super cruel. It's diabolical, terrible.
Cruel and unusual. Duncan, they're a little bit detached, aren't they? I mean, they're cutting food stamps, uh, 40 million people, while they're spending $300 million to build a ballroom. Contrast that. And speaking of detached, Trump is doing a world tour, right? He was in the UK, hosted by the royal family there, Gag Me with a Spoon in September.
Mhm.
Uh, in October in the Middle East and Asia. Um, what are they thinking about? I mean, smart politics, in your opinion?
Well, I think part of this is Trump's ego. I'm not sure how to factor that in, but he wants to be seen as a great statesman, traveling the world, making big deals, looking like an extremely important, you know, world global historic leader. So I think that's what he's thinking about. He's not thinking about people who don't have food stamps. I think
True.
that actually I believe there was even a Republican right wing senator, I think from Missouri or someplace, that thinks that cutting off food stamps is a bad idea. So not sure that's
That's
a
true
good
as
idea.
Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley from Missouri is
That's it.
made, and even Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia
Yeah.
also raising the issue that this is stupid, foolish politics. Scott, you live in New York State, and there's a big campaign coming up, big election coming up on Tuesday, where Brother Mamdani is battling against your good neighbor, Mr. Cuomo. You like to hang out, I know, with Biden and Cuomo and those guys.
Oh, you know
And
me.
I know you. I know you. I got your number, comrade. Um, and then there's the guardian angel fellow that the Republicans are. How are these issues affecting the New York City race? is the expectation in the party in New York that the Democratic Socialist candidate is going to take it?
I think there's, you know, cautious optimism. I think it's, the polls are certainly very favorable. The movement that is that the Mamdani campaign has um, built and sort of contributed to, because there's a movement for the rights of working class people that existed before and exists around that campaign as well. So yeah, there's, it's it seems like a really good chance of electing um, Mr. Mamdani as the new mayor of New York. And I think what we're really seeing in the just ferocious red baiting and ridiculous racism and Islamophobia of these attacks directed at him is the terror of the ruling class at even what is really a very moderate set of demands. Right, we're gonna freeze the rent on rent stabilized apartments. We're gonna make public transportation reliable and affordable. We're gonna try to make sure people can act, working class people can live in this city. Right, it's not he's not talking about expropriating the rich or anything. But the terror that he seems to have stirred up is a real indication, I think, of how tenuous the ruling class understands its position to be, and how the degree to which they know that the people of this country are done with their bullshit.
Done with their bullshit. 'Cause I really don't think that they're afraid of Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist, as such. You know, he wouldn't be the first Democratic Socialist to win the, what do you call it, mayorality, or whatever, however you say that word, in New York. David Dinkins was a DSA member, elected mayor in New York City. What I think that they're afraid of is the point that you made, Scott. They're afraid of that movement that's coming from below, and and they're afraid and realize, as you said, that working class people, young people, um, got their number, and they're tired of the politics of old, and they're organizing on the basis of bringing forward a new kind of politics. And I think that's what they are afraid of more than anything else. But of course, also the Islamophobia has a big role to play there. And they're preying on that and pushing. You heard what Cuomo said the other day. What if he got elected and 9/11 happened, and just Muslim baiting like nobody's business.
Mhm.
It gets me so. Anyway, Anita,
Hmm.
for the life of me, just shift the focus a little bit. I don't understand the foreign policy of U.S. imperialism today. I mean, other than Trump campaigning for the Nobel Peace Prize, you know, while they're blowing up boats in the Caribbean, um, canceling trade talks with Canada because of a commercial that the Canadians make, quoting Ronald Reagan on tariffs, threatening to invade Venezuela,
Mhm.
all the while Trump campaigning for the Nobel Peace Prize. So my question to you, comrade, this morning is, should he get it, the Nobel?
You've never asked me an easier question, Joe. Thank you. Not only that, he's also promising the troops that they can practice they can hone their craft of killing others and domination in U.S. cities. They're promising. He was promising that they can fight the war within to hone their craft. It's just despicable. I don't think this little Norwegian committee that decides on the peace prizes. I don't think they're going to be so easily swayed. And I don't think the new Prime Minister of Japan has much influence there either. So yeah, he is proving himself not to be a peace president at all, regardless of what he says. But I think what Duncan said was right. It's a lot about Trump's ego and his presentation of self as a world leader. It's very exciting to him. And I think that really came across in this meeting with Xi too. That it just turned out to be a kind of a nothing burger and a return to the status quo ante, without really anything. But they're hyping it big time, even though it sounds like it's a big diplomatic breakthrough. I watched Fox this morning to see what they had said about the Xi Trump meeting, and just anything that Trump said, that's the news on Fox. There's nothing below it, nothing deeper than that. So yeah, I think that's our foreign policy. I'm sure it's helping certain parts of the ruling class. I'm not sure the ruling class is, the ruling class elements don't want to go against what Trump is doing, because he does seem to be bringing them what they want in terms of tax cut breaks and domination over world markets. Yeah, it's not a rational foreign policy by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, Duncan, now, not a rational foreign policy for us, but from the ruling class standpoint, I'm not so sure. Duncan, Anita said it is a nothing burger, the Xi Trump summit. Nothing burger. Is that true? Talk to us about the summit. What were the respective goals of each side? Did they achieve those goals? And in your opinion, talk to us about the outcome. And I know Trump is supposed to be going to China later on in a few months, and then Xi, he said, was invited to the United States. Results of the summit, and what is the future look like of the two, I guess you would call them superpowers now, relationship going forward? Because they have had a very bellicose, very anti-China, anti-socialist, anti-communist policy up until this point. I would expect that that's going to continue. Go ahead, Duncan.
Well, one thing that's interested me about this summit is that I've been reading about it for weeks, it seems like, in U.S. and Western media, hyping it up, the big summit between Xi and Trump. But if you turn around and look at the Chinese press, they never mentioned it. It was literally never mentioned in the Chinese press until Tuesday. This is Friday, until a couple of days ago, when they announced that Xi would meet Trump. Now, I think the reason is that the Chinese were awaiting the outcome of the trade negotiations in Malaysia, which concluded on Monday, and to determine that those outcomes are satisfactory before they would agree to meet with. But anyway, they did give, an overall positive assessment of the meeting, although they kind of downplayed it, unlike the opposite of Trump. I mean, I think the meeting is good. Just the fact that the leaders meet and talk and have dialogue is better than not meeting and not having dialogue. I think that you do have a tariff truce, you might say, for a year. I think from the standpoint of the peace movement, it's good news in the sense I don't think there's going to be a shooting war, but started by the U.S. Anytime soon. You can, if you look at the results of the meeting in Malaysia, you can see what came out of it. It is basically a dialing back until, maybe until April. a few months ago, is sort of moving back towards that type of an arrangement. Um, but I would say I also have. So I think there's some good news here, but I also have an element of skepticism. The uh, element of skepticism in that Trump, of course, changes his mind on a dime. So who knows what's going to happen next? Also, people should be, consider that from the Chinese viewpoint, these issues, as important as they are not the most important issues in the U.S.-China relationship. That's Taiwan. That is the central issue from the Chinese viewpoint in the relationship, and nothing was said about Taiwan. So, um, yes, Trump has said, and the administration has come out and said, well, we're going to visit China in March and April. But actually, if you look at the Chinese statement on the meeting, they don't say Trump has an invitation to China, and they don't say that she's going to visit the United States. So the only other thing that I would say right now is this framing of the superpower competition. That's true in a certain respect, but you should also keep in mind that this whole tariff problem and the whole Taiwan problem, this has been aggressively imposed upon China by the US. China does not want war. China wants peace. You can say it's out of socialist principles or, self-interest or whatever, but China does not want this tit for tat tariff confrontation, wants the whole thing to end. Um, just one final thought. Now, they're saying that the average tariff rate on Chinese products into the U.S. has been reduced from 57% to 47%. That's still high. I looked up during the Obama administration, it was 3 or 4%. So that shows you still have very high tariffs and a very tense situation. But I think the United States has in the short term at least, backed off from a confrontation with China. Although in the long term, the published national security strategy of the United States still identifies China as the main problem, the main obstacle, the main competitor.
And
So that,
that is a Republican and Democratic posture, isn't it? I mean, it was in the first Trump administration that they started this extremely aggressive posture towards China. It was then continued under Biden, which says that the ruling class, the main elements in the ruling class, came to the conclusion that they're attempting to lure China towards the West by domestic investment in the Chinese economy, and the creation of a business and political opposition on the basis of that had failed, and that therefore they needed to switch tactics, Duncan, and pursue a more aggressive policy. No.
yeah, I think that's true, but I think it's also more complicated in that this aggressive policy seems to be not working. I think the U.S. ruling class has long been having different opinions about how to deal with China. The global strategists of hegemony and U.S. domination have a more confrontative approach. But on the other hand, I think the business community and what you might call the realists, the foreign policy realists, don't think that's going to work. Uh, there's already a multipolar world. I think even Marco Rubio said that. China is already the equal competitor. So you need to realize that's reality. If you're an imperialist, some imperialists think that a better strategy is to kind of consolidate U.S. power in the Western Hemisphere, increase repression in the United States, and back off from a confrontation with China, which is a fool's errand. I mean, you're not going to even the war games around Taiwan, most of them say China would defeat the United States. So I think it is a little more complex ruling class.
A little bit more complex. So I must say, I don't know how you would define winning in a war between China and the United States, given the nuclear equation. A more rational policy would be welcome, but and it's a big but. I remember during the first year or two of the Biden administration, there was a movement on the part of the environmental organizations in the United States to, on the basis of addressing the problem of global warming, to have a more neighborly, friendly, cooperative relationship with China. Um, and I remember there was something like 31 organizations joined by Bernie Sanders and a few others sent a letter to Biden uh, urging that kind of cooperation. But I recall the State Department was split on the issue. And then Putin invaded Ukraine, and all bets were off. And this more militaristic, aggressive policy in the Biden administration, led by his national security guy, I forget the guy's name, and the Secretary of State, what was his name, Blinken, were moving in that direction. But Scott, I mean, Duncan says it's complicated, and I'm sure he's right. But do you think it was a coincidence that Trump made this announcement that the United States was going to continue or reinitiate nuclear testing? Was that a coincidence to do that right while he was meeting with Xi?
I
Or
don't
was it a shot over the bow, in
I
your
don't
view?
think it was a coincidence at all because he specifically talked about falsely. In fact, he claimed that other nations were testing and that the U.S. had to catch up, which is not the case. The last nuclear test by another nation, I believe, was North Korea in 2017, or nuclear explosive detonation test. And this is, it's part of this ridiculous idea that the Trump regime and the MAGA sort of universe has been putting forth very aggressively for a while now, which is peace through strength, right? This idea that Trump presents himself as a peace candidate, but peace in the way that only a racist reactionary billionaire could possibly understand that term, which is domination through fear and order through the threat of overwhelming retribution, which in fact has been the basis of U.S. nuclear policy for a long time. So Trump is, in a certain sense, leaning into some of the worst parts of U.S. imperialism, some of its most violent and domineering aspects, when in fact the only rational route forward is to nuclear disarmament. Like I think there's a very broad recognition in the world that these weapons are not compatible with the future of humanity on this planet, right? And that there needs to be a move toward disarmament, but that's not possible as long as the United States is in this posture of trying to maintain its hegemony. And until the United States disarms, in fact, there's not going to be, to my mind, any substantial progress on that front, no matter how much I think much of the world wants that.
Until the United States makes the first move, Anita,
Mm-hmm.
Scott is saying there won't be progress on this issue. I, I got a question for you, Anita. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask all of y'all the same question. We're going to have a lightning round. In
Okay.
light of the nuclear saber rattling, do you think that the world is safer after the summit than we were before the summit started? Anita.
Uh, No, we're not safer. I mean, certainly bringing this up and not really defining what he's talking about and lying, as Scott said, about when other countries, I think it was North Korea, had tests in 2017, but before that, a long time ago, we haven't had that kind of nuclear testing. So yeah, he is saber rattling, and it is frightening, and it is making us less safe. I would say less safe.
By the way, I'm glad we got some international guests with us this morning who are watching the stream from Canada, from the Philippines, and other countries. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Please subscribe, send it to your friends. We want to build our audience. Duncan, you say it's complicated, and you say that there were some positive things that came out of this summit. So, question to you: are we safer today after the summit than we were before?
Well, I would say no. I mean, it's kind of a mixed response. I mean, um, I think from the point of view of a possible war against Venezuela, situations deteriorate in terms of domestically either. I think that um, there's increasing repression in the United States, and so I think Trump said that it's kind of like I'm the big bully, and I've got the big stick here. But I don't think he really knew what he was talking about. I didn't really think about what he was talking about. I mean, China has nuclear weapons. They also have a no first use policy. So prior to disarmament, I think demanding a no first use policy from the United States, that the United States will never be the first country to use a nuclear weapon. I think that's a demand that, the peace movement can raise, which would have a lot of support.
Of course, some people would say, well, you're too late by Hiroshima and Nagasaki already happened. We are the first and only country but I understand what you mean. In this new situation, that we would pledge no first use, which would be, I think, a big development. No question about that. Scott, what do you think? Safer?
No.
Less safe? Why?
Uh, I think, first of all, we haven't been safe for a long time. No one is safe in the world dominated by U.S. imperialism, by this hyper militarized superpower intent on, the ruling class term is projecting power, right, in every corner of the world. So we haven't been safe for many men. And in fact, a lot of what we see in the United States happening, the cuts to SNAP, the defunding of our social programs, the massive shift toward domestic repression are connected, in fact, to the maintenance of that militaristic posture and U.S. hegemony in the world. So we haven't been safe for a long time, and I think Trump's really thoughtless or calculatedly callous announcement about resuming nuclear testing, just heightened the threat. This regime has got to go, and the section of the ruling class that brought it to power, that organized it, financed it, provides its priorities, has got to go. And ultimately, we've been, as we've said for a long time now, capitalism has got to go.
Capitalism has got to go. Imperialism is extremely unstable now, you know. Their ability to maximize profits and the competitions, given the multipolar reality that Duncan you were talking about, is becoming much more problematic. And so they're reaching, they're really reaching, in an effort to stabilize and maintain. But the more that they reach and attempt to stabilize and maintain, the more unstable it becomes. You know, they don't know what to do, and it's not an expression of strength, but a symptom of deep and profound weakness. And look, countries aren't taking this stuff laying down. You know, they expect that Venezuela is just going to roll over. And well, I saw Duncan an interesting. I'm not sure it's true or not. Post the other day. It was put out by a publication called the BRICS country and mind bug, and they say that the China president says that Duncan that they will protect Venezuela if the United States attacks.
Mm.
I don't think that's true at all. I don't think you're going to see any Chinese military intervention anywhere except on its borders. China will definitely defend its borders. Taiwan Strait is, the shoreline right off Fujian Strait. They're not going to protect Venezuela. I'm very skeptical of that. I mean, they'll continue trading with Venezuela, might give it some economic, some financial support, but I think the idea of protection is wrong. BRICS is not a military alliance. It's primarily an economic alliance.
Yes. Well, I mean, it all depends on how you define protecting. It doesn't necessarily have to have a military confrontation. But I agree with you. I think that would represent a shift from their previous posture of win-win and seeking, trade and normalization of tensions and so on and so forth. But I don't think that anybody anywhere in the world is going to agree with U.S. imperialism claim to have domination in the Western hemisphere, and particularly in the Americas. Those days, Mr. Trump, are over. Forget about it. You know? What did Mao Zedong once say? People want freedom, nations want liberation, and the world's in disarray. Imagine that, me quoting Mao Zedong. I think that's the first time I've ever done that. Oh, well. If the shoe fits,
Can I
wear it.
ask,
Go ahead,
can I,
Duncan.
yeah, I just want to add one note. I thought it was interesting after Xi Jinping met with Trump, he then went to Seoul, South Korea for a state visit and a grand reception from the South Korean government. Now, just think, not too long ago, the South Korean government was hardline anti-communist. And now they're rolling out the red carpet for the leader of the largest communist party in the world. Doesn't mean the Republic of Korea is now more sympathetic to communism. It means that they recognize the changing realities that we have to deal with both China and the United States. And it cannot just exclusively be a relationship with the United States. And the South Koreans do that while the U.S. still has military bases that dominate in South Korea. So I thought that was quite a gutsy move on the part of the South Korean government.
Well, I think you're right, and they have their own economic interests to take into account, and their own stability, and their own pockets to line, and that's true of every single country, and so the class struggle, the fight against imperialism, the struggle for democracy, all of is taking place within this very a complicated situation. Well, let's move to our mailbag question this week. We if you have a question for the Communist Party USA, you can go to our website and you can email us a question and we will answer it live on air. And the question today is, how do you aim, Anita Scott Duncan, to abolish private property, especially within the framework of the Constitution? And in that regard, do you follow the principles of Marx, or are you straying? And if so, how? Who wants to take a shot at it?
I got a couple ideas.
Scott has ideas. Go ahead, Scott.
So, in the first place, we are following the principles of Marx, which don't really talk about how to, a specific political framework for abolishing private property, but talk about the contradiction at the heart of capitalism, where private ownership of the means of production becomes an obstacle to the development of productive forces, and that contradiction has to be resolved by getting rid of private ownership of the means of production. So that's one thing. We should also say that, this is something that Marx says in the manifesto. Capitalism has already abolished private property for 9/10 of the population, right? What we're against is the specific private property of the capitalist class. That is the private ownership of what the working class needs to produce all the wealth that exists. And finally, in terms of the constitutional framework, that doesn't seem to be a huge stumbling block for me. It's really a matter of just guaranteeing people's democratic rights as human beings over property rights. Right now, our Constitution protects property rights over democratic rights. We need to move toward one that does a little better.
Does a whole lot better, I would hope. Anita or Duncan, you want to take a shot?
I I will,
Anita, go
sure.
ahead.
Well, but I'm going to agree with Scott, and I think you have a really thoughtful answer there, Scott. We're not we're talking about productive property, of course, and our Constitution actually was written to protect that kind of property, and the private ownership of productive property. So I think there would be I'm not sure how that would change, but we need to get. We're talking about the people who are hoarding wealth and hoarding control over productive property, such that just a few people own half the wealth in our country. So I think it is. I think that getting rid of that kind of productive property is what Marx is talking about. Yeah, I can see that would be very strong, but not personal property, of course.
So no wonder Bezos is mad at you. And no wonder Elon Musk is mad at you. And Mr. Diamond of Duncan Chase Manhattan, you want to seize their private property and make it social. Am I wrong?
Well, I'm reminded, I believe Engels talked about the anarchy of production under capitalism would be replaced by a planned economy, a socialist planned economy that would benefit, the large majority of the people. I don't recall a whole lot of stuff about all private property would be abolished. I think that for example, the policies of a future socialist government in the United States, that's going to be, to a great extent, determined by the struggle and the direction it takes and what happens to private property. In a socialist United States, I don't think we can say for sure, but I don't think you're going to have a 100% abolition of private property. I don't think that's the goal. I think the goal is to have an economy that works for the people.
Have an economy that works for the people. But you also have the problem, Duncan, that as long as you have uh, private property at one end of the spectrum and a property-less population on the other end who are forced to sell their labor in order to live, you have a class struggle. And those who hold private property in the main means of production are compelled to not only make a profit, but get the highest profit possible. And the only way that they can do that is dog eat dog, and to take and to appropriate the surplus that the propertyless majority, like me, I don't have no private property except my car. And 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 so you have that class struggle. And so the question then becomes how to resolve it, that contradiction, and put the wealth in the hands of the people through, there may be mixed, there were experiments prior to the collapse of mixed forms of property. You had cooperative property, you had state property, you had collective property. Some places in Yugoslavia, they had worker self-management and cooperatives and so on and so forth. So what that will exactly look like in the United States remains to be seen. Somebody put up that we all have to do that within the framework of establishing a working class led state, number one, that practices a Bill of Rights socialism. And I agree with that very, very much. Well, it's been a great conversation. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. Uh, we no Nobel Prize for Donald Trump. Mr. Trump, you can forget about it,
Dream on.
Dream on. Stop nuclear saber rattling. No nuclear tests. There's no political, military, economic reason for the resumption of these tests. The only country that's had tests since the 1990s was the DPRK. The vast majority are, this is craziness. And Scott's right, you got to disarm. South Africa set the example, during the transition of apartheid, when the Democratic majority, the African black majority took. And that's because there are no winners. China, US war, no, my goodness, no. Nobody can win that kind of thing. Well, until next week, stay strong, stay safe, stay in the fight. Happy Halloween, everybody, and keep your spirits up and keep fighting. Good morning. Take care. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks to
Bye
all
bye.
you.
Thank you
Great
so
job.
much.